I knew the exact moment my career at Aegis Health was dead. It was not when the human resources representative with the dead eyes handed me a cardboard box. And it was not when security escorted me out like I was a rogue agent with a backpack full of stolen materials. No, the rot set in 6 months earlier. The second Devin Preston walked through the frosted glass doors, wearing a vest that cost more than my first car, and a smile that did not reach his eyes. He looked like he had been genetically engineered in a petri dish, designed solely to destroy substance with style. I am Richard. I do not do public speaking. I do not have a personal brand or a social media following. I am the person in the back room with the noise-canceling headphones, writing the code that actually makes the world turn. I was 52 years old, and I had spent my entire adult life building medical diagnostic systems that actually saved lives. I invented the Aegis Health diagnostic platform. Despite what our history page on the website claims now, it was 5 years of my life bled out in lines of code and clinical trials. It was a diagnostic engine that could predict rare genetic anomalies with 99.8% accuracy before a patient even showed a single symptom. It was elegant, it was precise, and critically, it was mine. Before I ever signed in contract with the company, I kept the primary patent. Aegis Health did not own the engine, they leased it. Think of it like renting a high-performance engine for a basic car chassis. They could drive it, paint it, or sell tickets to see it. But if they stopped paying the lease or violated the terms, I could reach into the hood and take my engine back. Devin Preston did not know that when he was hired. Or maybe he just did not care to read the fine print in the corporate cabinet. He was the new chief executive officer, brought in by the venture capitalists to scale us, which is business speak for inflate the valuation, sell it to the highest bidder, and leave the carcass for the vultures. He swept into the research and development lab that first day, smelling of expensive cologne and aggressive optimism. He picked up a prototype sensor, tossed it in the air, and caught it. "Richard, right?" he asked, not looking at me. He was looking at his teeth in my monitor. "I love what you are doing here. Really granular stuff, but we need to think bigger. We need to stop thinking medical device and start thinking lifestyle integration." "It detects leukemia, Devin," I said, my voice flat. "It is not a fitness tracker." He laughed. "That is the scientist's brain talking, Rick. I need you to activate your founder mindset. We are positioning for a massive liquidity event. Big players are sniffing around, including Apex Capital. They are putting $500 million on the table, but they need a clean narrative. Complexity scares money, Richard. Complexity saves lives." I shot back. He stopped smiling. Then he looked at me with the pity you reserve for a child trying to pay for groceries with toy money. "We will work on your pitch," he said, patting my shoulder. I flinched. "We are going to make you a star, Rick. Just trust the process." The process, it turned out, involved erasing me slowly. At first, my name started disappearing from the slide decks. The weekly updates, which I used to lead, were rescheduled to times that conflicted with my schedule. I would walk past the glass conference room and see Devin in there with the marketing team, gesturing wildly at a whiteboard that had my algorithms drawn on it in the wrong colors, explaining my work to people who thought programming was just typing fast. It was infuriating, but I was not worried yet. I was the golden goose. You do not shoot the goose, you just pluck a few feathers. I told myself to focus on the work, to focus on the patent update. I was quietly filing a continuation that covered the new artificial intelligence integration, but the atmosphere in the office was shifting, getting heavy like the air before a thunderstorm. The junior developers stopped making eye contact. The shared calendar suddenly had blocks labeled private strategy that took up half the day. I remember walking into the break room and finding a printed email left on the counter. It was from Devin to the board, right next to the creamer. "Legacy personnel are becoming a friction point for the Apex Capital deal," it read. "We need to streamline the intellectual property narrative. I am handling the Richard situation. Expect resolution by the third quarter, the Richard situation." That was me. I was not the chief technology officer anymore. I was a friction point, a smudge on the lens of his perfect $500 million vision. I picked up the paper. My hand did not shake. I do not panic. I analyze. I folded the email into a perfect square and put it in my pocket. If Devin wanted to play games, He should have checked who wrote the rules. He thought he was playing poker. He did not realize we were playing chess, and I had already moved my queen 5 years ago. I went back to my desk, unlocked my encrypted drive, and opened the folder labeled License Agreement Final Document. I stared at Clause 14B, the nuclear option. "Try me, Devin," I whispered to the empty room. "Just try me, if you have never worked in the technology industry. Let me explain the phenomenon of the soft lockout. It is not as dramatic as changing the physical locks on the office doors. It is 1,000 tiny cuts designed to bleed your authority dry until you are just a ghost haunting your own cubicle. It started with the communications channels. One morning, I noticed the leadership core channel was gone from my dashboard. When I messaged the systems administrator kid named Luke, whom I had personally hired, he took 3 hours to reply. "Hey Rick, Devin restructured the communications channels. Said we needed to streamline decision-making. You are in Research General now." Research General was the channel where the summer interns posted memes and asked where the extra cables were. I had been demoted from the cockpit to the cargo hold without a single meeting. I walked into the office that day, and the silence was deafening. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and everyone stops talking? It was that, but constant. My team, people I had mentored, whose wedding invitations were still on my refrigerator, would suddenly become absorbed in their screens as I passed. They knew. And the survival instinct in Silicon Valley is stronger than loyalty. If the chief executive officer is sharpening the axe, you do not stand next to the tree. Then come the junior analyst incident. Todd was 22, wore designer vests exclusively, and had the intellectual depth of a puddle in a summer heat wave. He was Devin's new pet project, carrying some nonsense title like Innovation Associate. I was in the communal kitchen, staring at the espresso machine, when Todd bounced in. "Hey Richard, quick question," he chirped, oblivious to my do not disturb energy. "I am scrubbing the merger data on the slide deck for the Apex Capital due diligence team. Devin said to make sure all the intellectual property attributions are clean. I saw your name on the legacy documents, but I can just find and replace that with Aegis Health Proprietary Holdings, right? Just to keep the narrative consistent." My blood ran cold, liquid nitrogen cold. "Todd," I said, my voice calm. "Show me the deck." He pulled up his tablet. "Yeah. See, Devin put a note here. Assert full corporate ownership. Remove founder liabilities." I looked at the slide. It was a diagram of my neural net architecture, the specific recursive loop that made the whole diagnostic system work. And right there in bold lettering it said, "Property of Aegis Health, Incorporated, wholly owned subsidiary." Devin was legally claiming he owned the land my house was built on. Under the terms of our license, Aegis Health had exclusive usage rights, not ownership. Claiming ownership to a third party like Apex Capital was a material breach of contract. It was fraud. "Interesting," I said. "Todd, could you email that specific draft to me? I just want to double-check the formatting." "Sure thing," he said, tapping away. "You are the best, Rick." Poor Todd. He had no idea. He just handed me the ammunition to execute his boss. I went back to my desk and waited for the notification ping. There it was. Apex Capital Pitch Version 4 Final Presentation. I did not scream or storm into Devin's office. I opened my personal email. Never use corporate email for the kill shot. I forwarded the file to my lawyer, a brilliant woman named Claire who makes sharks look like gentle goldfish. My message was 3 words. "Timestamp this breach." Claire replied in 2 minutes. "Received. Clause 7 violation confirmed. Under California contract law, this material misrepresentation of ownership to a third party constitutes a fundamental breach that renders the license void ab initio if they do not cure it immediately. Are we pulling the trigger?" "Not yet," I typed back. If I pulled the license now, the deal would collapse and Devin would spin it as me being a difficult, greedy founder who sabotaged the company out of spite. I needed him to commit. I needed him to stand in front of the world and lie so boldly that there was no walking it back. I needed the humiliation to be absolute. I typed back, "Wait, let him dig the grave deeper." The next few days were a blur. I sat in meetings where they discussed the future of the product without asking the person who actually built it. I watched Devin strut around the office, high on the fumes of a $500 million deal. He bought a gong, a literal brass gong. Every time they cleared a hurdle with the due diligence team, he would bang it with a wooden mallet. Gong, legal review complete. Gong, financial audit passed. Every bang was a nail in his coffin. He was so confident. He thought I was just a quiet nerd he could bully into silence. He thought my silence was submission. He did not understand that for an engineer, silence is not empty. Silence is processing power. Silence is the system compiling the code before the execution command runs. Devin called me into his office late on a Thursday afternoon. The sun was setting, casting long red shadow across the glass walls of the high-rise. He did not offer me a seat. He was leaning back in his ergonomic chair, fingers steeped. "Rick, we need to talk about the transition," he said. "Transition?" I asked, playing the part of the oblivious scientist. "The deal is closing next week," he said. "Apex Capital wants a fresh start, and frankly, your salary is heavy. We are going to need you to sign a release, a graceful exit. We will give you 3 months of severance, and you sign over any residual intellectual property claims just to tidy up the paperwork. And if I do not?" I asked. He smiled. That shark smile again. "Then we terminate you for cause, insubordination, failure to adapt. We will bury you in legal fees until you are selling that patent of yours for scrap metal." He was threatening to fire the actual patent holder. It was so stupid I almost laughed. "I will think about it," I said. "You have until the all-hands meeting tomorrow morning," he said. "Do not make this ugly, Richard." "I would not dream of it," I said, and walked out. I went to the server room, the hum of the cooling fans wrapping around me like a comforting blanket. I sat there for hours, just watching the lights blink. Green, green, green. Everything was working perfectly. Tomorrow, the lights were going to go red. The main conference room at Aegis Health was affectionately known as the Fishbowl. It was a glass-walled monstrosity in the center of the open-plan office. Today, the entire company was crammed in there, or hovering around the edges outside the glass for the strategic alignment all-hands meeting. Devin Preston stood at the head of the table, flanked by the board of directors. It looked like a row of vultures in Italian suits, picking at the catered pastries. Devin was practically vibrating. He had the energy of a man who believes he is about to become a tech god. I stood in the very back, leaning against the wall, wearing dark jeans and a black blazer. I was dressed for a demolition team. Devin started, his voice projecting without a microphone. "We stand on the precipice of history. Apex Capital has recognized what I have been telling you for 6 months. Aegis Health is not just a company, it is a paradigm shift." A few people clapped, mostly the marketing team. My engineers looked at their shoes. They knew the technology was solid, but they also knew the paradigm shift was mostly smoke and mirrors built on my hard work. "To get here," Devin continued, pacing, "we had to make tough choices. We had to trim the fat. We had to pivot from a research-first mindset to a growth-first mindset." He stopped pacing and turned slowly until he was facing me. The room went silent. "Richard," he said. He did not use my last name, just Richard, like a disappointed father. "You have been with us since the beginning. You wrote the original code, and for that, we thank you. But," he said, his voice dropping to a theatrical hush, "what got us here will not get us there. We need visionaries, not just technicians. We need people who understand that a patent is worthless if it does not sell. You have been resistant. You have held on to the old ways. You think like a scientist in a laboratory, not a businessman in the arena." My face burned, but I kept my expression neutral. A stone mask. Let him talk, I thought. Let him put it all on the record in front of everyone. "We offered you a generous transition package," Devin said, lying through his teeth in front of 50 people. "You refused. You threatened to hold the company hostage over technicalities." Murmurs rippled. He was painting me as the villain, the greedy founder standing in the way of everyone's payday. "So," he said, straightening his cuffs, "effective immediately, Richard, your employment is terminated. For cause. Security will escort you out." He gestured to the door. 2 beefy security guards were already waiting. It was choreographed. He wanted this visual, the old guard being physically removed to make way for the new. I looked at the board. They were watching me with bored indifference. I looked at my team. Todd, the junior analyst, looked like he was going to vomit. Luke, the systems administrator, gave me a tiny, imperceptible nod. I pushed off the wall. I did not scream. "You are making a massive mistake, Devin," I said. My voice was quiet, but in the silence of that room, it carried like a gunshot. "The only mistake," he sneered, "was thinking we needed you this long." Your patent is company property, Richard. Read your contract. Now get out. I picked up my bag. I walked past the table of vultures. I walked past Devin, who was already turning back to the room, dismissing me. I walked to the door. The security guard reached for my arm. I sidestepped him. I know the way, I said. I walked to the elevators. As the doors closed, I saw Devin raising a glass of champagne, laughing. He thought the game was over. I pulled out my phone and opened the encrypted chat with Claire. Rick, he did it, I wrote. Public termination for cause, and he explicitly claimed the patent as company property in front of the board. Claire, he is dead, she replied. Rick, execute the revocation. The 24-hour clock starts now. I walked out of the building and into the blinding California sun. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of exhaust and eucalyptus. It smelled like freedom. I had 24 hours to wait. Then the world would burn. There is a specific kind of silence that follows a detonation. It is the sound of the shock wave traveling before the debris hits the ground. That was my life for the next 24 hours. I went home to my apartment in the Marina District. It is a clean space with a server rack in the closet that hums like a sleeping cat. I did not turn on the television or check business networks to see the inevitable spin Devin's public relations team was putting out. Aegis Health streamlines leadership for next-generation growth. I could write the headline in my sleep. Instead, I made tea. I sat on my balcony watching the fog roll over the Golden Gate Bridge, and I visualized the email that was currently sitting in the inbox of Aegis Health's general counsel. Claire had sent it at exactly 11:03 in the morning. Subject: Notice of license revocation. Immediate action required. To the General Counsel of Aegis Health, Incorporated, with a copy to the Board of Directors. Per Clause 14B of the Master License Agreement dated 5 years ago, the licensor, Richard, hereby exercises the right to revoke all usage rights to patent number 99482B, the Aegis Health Diagnostic Engine, due to material breach of contract. Specifically, Section 7, false claims of ownership, and Section 12, termination of the founder without cause. Under California contract law, this breach renders the agreement void ab initio. This revocation is effective 24 hours from receipt of this notice. At 11:03 in the morning tomorrow, Aegis Health, Incorporated, must cease all operations utilizing the licensed technology or face immediate litigation for patent infringement. It was a kill switch, a legal electromagnetic pulse. Devin would not see it immediately. He was too busy drinking expensive scotch. The general counsel, a man named Donald who was perpetually overwhelmed, probably flagged it as urgent, but did not want to interrupt the party. They would assume it was a bluff. I poured a glass of wine. I watched the sun go down. Around 4 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Luke, the systems administrator. Vibes are weird here, Luke wrote. Donald from legal just ran into Devin's office looking like he saw a ghost. Devin is yelling, "You good?" I smiled. The shockwave had arrived. "I am great, Luke," I replied. "Just doing some gardening. Keep your head down. By 6 in the evening." The first call came. It was not Devin. It was Donald, the general counsel. "Richard," Donald's voice was tight, strained. "We received a concerning document from your lawyer." "Hello, Donald," I said, sipping my wine. "I assume you mean the revocation notice." "Look, let us not be rash," he said, trying for a conciliatory tone. "Devin was heated today. The termination, we can reclassify it as a layoff. We can boost the severance. Pulling the license, that is nuclear. You are destroying the company's value. The company has no value without my intellectual property, Donald. Devin made that clear today when he said my patent was company property. Since he seems confused about who owns what, I am just clarifying the situation. Richard, be reasonable. Apex Capital is signing the deal on Monday. If this cloud is hanging over the intellectual property, they will walk. That sounds like a Devin problem, not a Richard problem, I said. You have 17 hours left. I hung up. I blocked Donald's number. Then I saw Devin's name flash on the screen. He called again and again, 11 times in 20 minutes. I imagined him in his office, tie loosened, sweat beading on his forehead, staring at the phone. He was used to people folding, but he could not buy me. I did not need his money. I had my patents, my dignity, and the absolute certainty that I was right. The next morning, I woke up at 7 in the morning, 4 hours until the deadline. My phone was a graveyard of missed calls and texts. Rick, pick up the phone. Rick, we need to talk. Richard, please, let us work this out. The desperation was delicious. But I was not waiting for Devon. I was waiting for Apex Capital. Because right about now, Claire was sending a courtesy copy of the revocation notice to the buyer's legal team as part of standard due diligence disclosures. The bomb was not just under Aegis Health's chair. It was under the entire deal. At 9:30 in the morning, the phone rang. Unknown number. Palo Alto area code. "This is Richard," I said. "Mr. Richard," a cool, unfamiliar voice said. "This is Charles Hayes, lead counsel for Apex Capital Ventures. We just received a document regarding the intellectual property status of the Aegis Health platform. Do you have a moment?" I smiled. "For you, Charles. I have all day." Charles Hayes sounded like a man who bills $1,200 an hour. His voice was smooth, devoid of emotion, and sharp as a scalpel. "Let me understand the timeline," Charles said. "You hold the primary utility patent for the diagnostic algorithm. You licensed it to Aegis Health 5 years ago. The chief executive officer terminated your employment and asserted full ownership of said patent in a recorded meeting." "That is correct," I said. "He also violated the non-disparagement clause and the founder protection clause." "My lawyer has the transcripts." "I see," Charles said. "And the license revocation takes effect in about 90 minutes. At 11:03 in the morning," I said. "Mr. Richard?" "Charles," said, his tone respectful. "Apex Capital is prepared to deploy $500 million based on the premise that Aegis Health owns or has an irrevocable, perpetual license to this technology. If that license is revoked, we are essentially buying a very expensive office lease and some designer chairs. Without the algorithm, the machine is just a box of sensors that beeps randomly," I said. "Devon Preston believes that if he ignores a contract hard enough, it stops existing. He bet that I would not blow up the deal because I have equity. He forgot that I care more about the integrity of my invention than I do about his stock price." "Understood," Charles said. "Thank you for your candor. I was not in the room when the guillotine dropped, but thanks to the deposition transcripts and Luke's eyewitness account, I can replay it in ultra-high definition. At 11:15 in the morning, the entire board sat in the fishbowl, facing the Apex Capital team. Charles Hayes stood up, holding a single piece of paper, and announced that they were pausing the acquisition process, effective immediately. The room erupted. One of the board members, a venture capitalist named Frank, sputtered about funds being in escrow. Charles calmly replied that the funds were frozen. They had received confirmation from the primary patent holder, Richard, that the license agreement had been revoked due to material breach of contract. Devon slammed his hand on the table, shouting that I was bluffing and that the company owned the intellectual property. Charles turned to Devon, looking at him with clinical detachment. He explained that they had reviewed the original master license agreement, specifically Clause 12, the founder protection provision. It stated clearly that if the licensor is terminated without cause, or if the licensee asserts ownership rights in contradiction to the agreement, the license becomes voidable with 24 hours notice. Charles slid my lawyer's notice across the table. The notice had been served 24 hours ago, which meant the license was officially dead. As of 11:03 in the morning today, Aegis Health was operating an unlicensed medical device. Every scan they ran was patent infringement. Charles told them they were trying to sell a stolen car. The board turned to Devon. The temperature in the room plummeted. Frank asked if he had actually fired the patent holder. Devon stammered that he had only streamlined the department and did not think I would react. Frank cut him off, furious that Devon had lied about the security of the intellectual property. Devon yelled that they still had the code, but Charles corrected him. The code was useless without the right to use it. Furthermore, their technical due diligence revealed that the system required a cryptographic handshake from my private key to install updates, which they could no longer access. Charles buttoned his jacket and delivered the final blow. Without my cooperation, the company was worth less than zero, and they were looking at massive lawsuits from investors, patients, and Apex Capital itself. Frank ordered Devon to get out, informing him that the board was convening an emergency session and relieving him of his duties. Devon stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The disruptor was finished. Security escorted him out. Meanwhile, I was at home making a sandwich that tasted like victory. By 2 in the afternoon, the board sent an email with the subject urgent reconciliation. They claimed there had been a misunderstanding, that Devon had been removed, and they wanted to reinstate my role with a significant retention package, including equity and a seat on the board. I read it and laughed, letting them sweat. At 4, Claire called to report that Frank had offered the chief technology officer role and a $2 million signing bonus if I reactivate the license by Monday. I told her I did not want the money. I wanted the technology back. I wanted Aegis Health to dissolve the research division and transfer all assets related to my platform back to my holding company. The standoff lasted 3 days. Aegis Health's valuation tanked, and the junior developers resigned. On Tuesday, the board caved. I met Frank at a coffee shop on neutral ground. He looked 10 years older as he slid the asset transfer agreement across the table. They released all claims, and I dropped the patent infringement suit. Frank noted that Devon was facing a shareholder lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty and would never work as a chief executive officer in this town again. I signed the paper, telling Frank that Devon had confused business with bullying. Science is about cause and effect, and he forgot that part. Here is the detail that makes this whole disaster funny. Even if Devon had not fired me, he still would have failed. 2 months before the junior analyst incident, I had filed a separate patent. The platform relied on a machine learning model to interpret genetic data, but models drift over time. To keep the accuracy at 99.8%, the system needed a recalibration every 6 months. I had invented an automated feedback loop that made the system self-healing, filing it as a separate patent owned 100% by me. Without my new update, which I held the keys to, the accuracy would have dropped to 85% within 6 months. Apex Capital would have bought a broken product and sued Aegis Health. Devon thought he was selling a perpetual motion machine, but he was just selling a wind-up toy, and I held the key. I sat in my apartment looking at the signed agreement. I had my technology back. I opened my laptop to find a message from Charles Hayes. He noted that while the Aegis Health deal was dead, Apex Capital remained interested in the technology and preferred founders who read the fine print. I smiled but did not reply. I was going to let the dust settle, rebrand, and hire Luke, Todd, and the rest of my team to build something new. A week later, I went to the office to pick up my lucky cactus. The office was a ghost town, and the brass gong sat silent in the corner. I saw Devon packing boxes under the supervision of a guard. We locked eyes through the glass. He mouthed something, but I did not care. I walked out into the California sun. My phone buzzed with a text from Luke stating the servers were secure and ready for migration. I typed back, "Go." I started my car and merged onto Highway 101. The patent was safe, the team was safe, and I was just getting started. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed watching an arrogant corporate executive get legally obliterated, please hit that like button. And seriously, read your contracts. Real power does not announce itself. It simply acts with precision. Always know your worth and protect it fiercely. Appreciate you all for sticking through this one. See you in the next story.